Hey poker people, this is Sky coming at you with another weekly boost from Smart Poker Study. Today we are discussing how to build a range to a specific frequency. Now, this video is a companion video to podcast episode 90, where I talk all about open raising ranges. Now, within the video, I discuss the optimal frequencies by position for cash game play, how often you should enter pots in each position. And now I use, when I think about position and everything, I use Ed Miller's positional breakdowns. He goes the EP, the cutoff, the button, and the blinds. And EP is actually everything before, or the hijack and before, so under the gun through hijack in a full ring game. And then the cutoff button, the blinds right here. Now, what he recommends, and I really do agree with his ranges here, he recommends a 14% range in early position. The cutoff is 22%, the button 33%, and then when you're in the blinds, raising over limpers. As you know, a lot of times cash games, you get a ton of limpers in the games. You're going to be raising at 6%, at a 6% range over limpers. And if you're raising first in the blind, so if you're in the small blind or in a blind versus blind confrontation as a big blind player, you're going to be raising the full 33% range, the same as the button right here. And the way I create or build my ranges to a specific frequency is, of course, I use FlopZilla, the greatest ranging program there is. And then so the reason I use it is because it's easy to use. You get to see playability of different hands, and I talk about playability in the podcast and on the website I talk about it. But playability is basically how well your hand connects with flops, or hands and ranges with flops. So we could take, for example, King 10 suited. The playability of this, middle pair or better, hitting an open in a straight draw or better, or a lot of these combo draws, you hit that with King 10 suited 46.1% of the time. Compare that with King Queen offsuit, for example. You're going to hit the flop with one of these made hands or a draw 36% of the time. So King 10 suited has much better post-flop playability in this case. Oh, and then of course you can also see a full range of hands, how well that hits a flop. This range right here, just random range, hits 47.7%. But let's see this range right here, worst cards, it hits only 29.4%. So you can see that's one of the benefits of using FlopZilla. And then in FlopZilla, of course, you can compare range versus hands very quickly. So let's say we have a range of all pocket pairs. That's the only thing we play. We never play anything but pocket pairs. How does this range fare against, for example, Jack 10 suited? Well, the equity of the range, we have 58% equity in the hand. That means on average we're going to win the pot outright, not win the pot, I'm sorry, win the hand at showdown 58% of the time, whereas the hand itself wins 41% of the time. Contrast this with of course, everyone's favorite pocket aces. Pocket aces will win against a range of every pocket pair 80% of the time. So that's how you do that, comparing range versus hand. And then you can also compare hand versus hand. So earlier, of course, we talked about King 10 suited, 46% playability. King Queen off, 36% playability. But how do these hands fare just against each other in a straight up head-to-head confrontation right here? Well, King 10 suited, actually, the equity of this hand itself is only 30%, whereas the equity of King Queen offsuit is 69% because of the big card advantage. But we like the playability of the King 10 suited because it allows us to maybe attack our opponents in a whole lot more, in many more different ways post-flop. So, but that's how we use this when we compare hand to hand in this case. And if you've never seen this, pocket aces, of course, versus pocket deuces, well, aces are going to win 82% of the time. But pocket aces versus ace 7 suited, or 8-7 suited, I mean to say, it's only winning 77% of the time, which is quite a lot. I mean, I'll take aces over 8-7 any day. But you can see how 8-7 performs 22%, or it has 22% equity, versus that pocket deuces at only 18% equity. So a bit more having that suited connector there versus the pocket aces. Great. So now let's talk about building a range. Now, when we build the range today, we're going to choose the simplest one just to make this video a little shorter and simpler and easier for you to follow along. So when you build a range to a specific frequency, and of course today we're going to build it to the early position frequency of 14%, you start with pocket pairs, and of course, as we all know, pocket pairs are right here. Next, you move to the broadways. And then next you're going to be going to the suited aces, all of these bad boys up here. Suited connectors are always fun to add to a range. And then suited gappers, of course, are all these 1 and 2 gappers here. And then miscellaneous stuff is just everything else on the board right here. So let's clear that and go ahead and get started. So we're building to 14%. We want to start with pocket pairs. Now, if you remember, early position is under the gun all the way through the hijack right here. And the reason why we only have 4 positions is we're keeping things simple for ourselves. So we start off with pocket pairs. So we want to add all pocket pairs. So in the hijack, of course, we want to open deuces through 5s and 6s and 7s and stuff. But you also want to do this under the gun because it makes you just really unpredictable. Your opponents are not going to know when you're coming in for a 3 big blind open, whether you have deuces or aces or any of the other hands we end up putting in this range right here. So that's the first thing. We add pocket pairs. We're trying to get to 14%. We are at 6% right now. Not too bad. Let's go to suited broadways next. Now, when it comes to suited broadways, I generally add them all and then subtract them as necessary as I'm building out the range. So adding the suited broadways, we're up to 9% right here. Now, the offsuit broadways, there is a huge difference between the suited and the offsuit stuff, of course. You want to have many more suited hands within your ranges because it just gives you a lot more options post-flop, and of course, you know, the post-flop playability is a whole lot higher with suited hands. So if you ever have a choice between king-jack suited and king-queen suited, you're going with this, or offsuit, you're going with the suited, of course. Same thing, king-queen, you're going with the suited. So let's add this. If we add everything else and we still need to add hands to our range to build it out, we can, of course, come in and add the other offsuit broadways. But for now, let's leave those ones off. So we're at 11.6%, almost there to the 14%. And then next is suited aces. Now, we can add them all. We can always subtract later on, but I really like coming in with every single suited ace just because, you know, everybody knows how well these flop nut draws. They flop nut hands, they turn nut hands. You're able, because you're ace also, you're able to put a lot of pressure on opponents, and they're just, suited aces are great hands. We can always remove a lot of the weaker ones later on if we need to. Let's see, next up are suited connectors. When it comes to suited connectors, I like to go down to 7-6 suited because it's the early positions right here. I don't want to go under the gun with 5-4 or 6-5. In the later positions, yes, I'll add those in. But now, early position through the hijack, no thank you. Just stick with that right there. And now this is where we would add suited gappers. But you could see that we're at 15.2%. We're a little bit over the recommended 14% range right there. Or 14% frequency. So we're at 15.2%. So we have to get rid of some stuff. And I'm fine with getting rid of the king queen off. It doesn't play. It plays pretty well. You can flop a lot of top pair hands and a lot of straight draws and stuff. But it's offsuit. If I'm going to get rid of anything within a range, I first look to the offsuit hands. So we ditch that one right there. We're left with 14.3%, which is just right at our right at the frequency that we're looking for, the optimal frequency, 14% there. So in the early position, we concluded, we figured out our range. We have 190 combos in the range. What is it, 14.3%? And the hands are a nifty way to do this. It just gives you the range, a quick range export, you know. So we Control-C that, come over here, Control-V it. And then the playability of this entire range, which is great, it's 49.5%. So 49.5% of the time, basically 50% of the time, we are flopping with this range mid pair or better, open in a straight draw or better, and gut shot plus pair or better than that, which is a great post-flop playability to have within your range. Alrighty, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little something from it. Go ahead and take the time, whip out FlopZilla for yourself, and build out your own ranges. The cutoff, 22%. The button, 33%. Blinds, you're raising over limpers at 6%. And raising first in, or blind versus blind confrontation, you're raising at 33% right here, which is actually just the same as the button range. So go ahead and do that. If you listen to the podcast, I give you the exact ranges that I use to fill these frequencies. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and have a good day.